The day of my wife's funeral, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I ignored it at first. I mean, who would have the cruelty to call at a time like this? But when the call insisted a second, a third, a fourth time, I finally answered. What I heard on the other end froze my blood. A voice, faint, choked, spoke the exact same words my Helen whispered to me before she died. "I'll see you tomorrow, my love." The silence that followed was so deep, I felt like the world had stopped. Then the voice came back, weaker, almost a sigh. "I'll see you tomorrow, David." I don't remember dropping the phone, but I found it on the ground, buzzing between my shoes. The people around me continued to say their goodbyes to Helen. My kids were talking with the other mourners. The flowers were wilting under the midday sun, and I was just there, nailed to the ground, shaking, my heart pounding like it wanted to break out of my chest. The same tone of voice, the same phrase, the same sweetness that had been by my side for 40 years. But before I go on, I've got to ask, have you subscribed to the channel yet? And is this story hitting home for you? It really helps me see that you support what I do and that you're enjoying the stories I put my heart into. Drop me a comment and let me know what city you're listening from. All right, let's get back to it. The afternoon of the burial was a blur. Everything came to me in fragments, my daughter's sobs, the low voice of the pastor, the sound of the casket being lowered into the earth, but the only thing I could really hear was Helen's voice, playing over and over in my head. "I'll see you tomorrow." It was impossible. The number wasn't logged, and when I tried to call back, all I got was a dead tone. And yet, something deep inside me knew it hadn't been a mistake. That voice wasn't an echo or a coincidence. It was her. When everyone had left, I stayed behind, alone in front of the grave. The air smelled like damp earth and freshly cut flowers. I touched the headstone, still cold, and whispered, "If that's you, Helen, don't scare me like this." The wind kicked up suddenly. A strong gust moved the wreaths, and a white ribbon came loose, landing right at my feet. It had something written on it. "Don't be afraid, David." My heart leaped. That was her handwriting. I knew it instantly. I went back to the house feeling like I was walking in two worlds, the real one, where everyone told me I had to move on, and this other one, where the past seemed to refuse to die. The house was empty, but everything smelled like her. Her perfume lingering in the air, the coffee mugs on the shelf, her scarf draped over the chair. I turned on the living room light, and for a second, I thought I saw her reflection in the mirror, smiling the way she used to before the sickness took her. I closed my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't have any tears left. Just one question. What was she trying to tell me with that call? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in front of the phone, waiting for it to ring again. Every time the screen lit up, my heart hammered. But nothing. Just silence. Around midnight, I opened the drawer where I kept her things and took out her handkerchief, her wedding ring, and a photo of us on the beach, taken over 20 years ago. I stared at it for a long time. Her smile was the same one I had heard in that voice, that smile that said more than any words. Calm, patience, faith. I tried to convince myself it was all just a product of grief. The mind can play tricks on you when the loneliness is too much. But when I looked at the phone again, I noticed something that made me hesitate. The call log showed the exact time of the burial, but not the number. It just said, unknown. No area code, no data, no duration, as if it had never happened. And yet, I had heard every word. I went out to the garden for some air. The moon lit up the plants she had cared for so many years. The rose bush, her favorite, was still blooming. I bent down, touched the damp earth, and felt a chill. The scent was the same one it had when she would lean over to prune it, humming that soft tune that always followed her. And then I heard it. Faint, almost imperceptible. A voice among the leaves, hers, singing. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. There was no one there, just the sound of the wind in the branches, and her voice, repeating that song that only the two of us knew. I ran back inside. I shut the door and leaned my back against the wall. It wasn't fear I was feeling. It was something else, something deeper. It was as if the universe was giving me back something I had lost, but at a price I didn't understand yet. I looked at the photo on the table again and whispered, "If you need to tell me something, just do it." And then the phone rang again. Just once. A single, sharp, cutting ring. When I picked it up, the screen was black. No number, just one word written in tiny letters. Tomorrow. The air grew heavy. I felt the walls closing in around me. I stared at that word until the screen's glow faded. I didn't know if I should be hopeful or terrified, but deep down, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Anticipation, as if somehow I was going to see her again tomorrow. They say that when someone is about to die, their voice changes. It gets softer, slower, as if they're already speaking from somewhere else. That's what happened with Helen. Her words had that calm, that scary calm, that serenity you don't understand until it's too late. I spent those nights by her bed, counting the beeps of the monitor as if they were the heartbeats we still had left together. Every breath she took was a prayer, every silence, a threat. I remember the last afternoon in the hospital. The sun came through the window and painted her skin a warm gold, so beautiful it hurt to look at her. She turned her head toward me. She smiled tenderly and said, "David, do you promise not to cry when I'm gone?" I laughed, but I was breaking inside. "You can't promise that, Helen." "Then promise me something else," she whispered. "Promise me you'll keep looking at me, even when you can't see me." I didn't understand what she meant, but I took her hand and nodded. "I'll always look for you, my love." The doctors had told me she only had a few days, but she seemed to be in no hurry. It was like she was waiting for something. Every time I came into the room, I'd find her staring at the ceiling, humming the same melody she used to hum when she watered the flowers in the garden. I asked her what she was thinking about. She answered with her eyes fixed on an invisible point. "I'm thinking about tomorrow." "What part of tomorrow?" I said, trying to smile. "About the part where you see me again." Those words haunted me for days. Even after the funeral, when I heard that voice on the phone, it was the first thing that came to my mind. The part where you see me again. Maybe she wasn't talking about death. Maybe she was talking about something I still didn't understand. Helen was like that. She always saw something more. While I was worried about bills, about repairs, about schedules, she saw the soul of things. She used to say that every person leaves an invisible mark on the places they love, and that when someone leaves, those marks are still there, waiting to be found. "That's why I like to paint the walls a light color," she'd say, "because the light leaves footprints." I would laugh, not really getting it. Now, every time I look at the sun reflecting on the walls of our house, I think I see her shadow moving in the light. The last day, the hospital was quiet. Nurses came and went, but she barely noticed them. She only looked at me. Her skin was cold, but her eyes were bright. "David," she said, "I need you to promise me one more thing. Anything. Promise me you won't get trapped in the noise of the pain. Promise me you'll keep listening to the silence." "What silence?" I asked. She smiled. "Mine." I laughed so I wouldn't cry, but when she took my hand, I understood she was serious. Her pulse was weak, almost invisible. Then she sat up just a little and told me her last words. "I'll see you tomorrow, my love." And she was gone. No screaming, no fear, just that peace that I had never known. After her death, the world went flat. The clock kept ticking, but time wasn't moving forward. The house, the hallways, the unused dishes, everything seemed suspended in a gray eternity. I'd get up early only so I'd have a reason to go back to bed, until that call came. That damned and blessed call that broke the silence. Her voice, repeating the same words, woke up something I thought was dead inside me. Hope. I started looking for meaning in everything. I went through the albums, the letters, the drawers, even the flower pots in the garden. And in one of them, under the dirt, I found something I hadn't seen before. A small metal box, rusted from the moisture. Inside, a folded piece of paper and a seed. The paper was in her handwriting. "If one day I'm gone, plant this and wait for it to bloom." The seed was from a flower I didn't recognize, but I planted it anyway, right outside the window where she used to sit. Since then, I water it every morning. And I swear that sometimes, when the water hits the soil, I can hear her laugh in the sound of the water. Sometimes I think Helen knew what was going to happen, that she left every sign, every word, every gesture, like pieces of a puzzle I could only understand when she was gone, because that was her way of loving. Patient, mysterious, eternal. And maybe that call, that voice telling me I'll see you tomorrow, isn't a message from the beyond, but her way of reminding me that there's still something waiting for me on the other side of fear. That night, before I fell asleep, the phone lit up again. It didn't ring. A notification just appeared. New voicemail. There was no sender, no number. And yet, I knew who it was. My hand was shaking as I hit play. The voice was hers, as clear as if she were right next to me. "David, don't lock the garden gate. Tomorrow, when the sun comes up, someone is coming to see you." The message cut off. I stared at the screen, silent, my heart racing. I didn't understand any of it, but I felt that, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The night after the voicemail was the first time I felt like the house was breathing. It wasn't just the creaking of the old wood or the wind moving the curtains. It was something else, a low murmur, almost human, that seemed to come from the walls. Every corner had its own rhythm. The stairs groaned as if someone was walking up them. Helen's bedroom door swung slowly on its own, and the hallway clock, which had been stopped for years, started ticking again with an irregular beat. It was as if something, or someone, was trying to talk to me. I turned on all the lights, as if that could chase away the feeling of being watched, but all it did was make my reflection in the glass stare back at me, the face of a tired man with swollen eyes and shaky faith. I sat in the armchair with the phone in my hand, waiting for it to ring again. Nothing. The silence was as heavy as a stone. I decided to play Helen's recording one more time. Her voice came softly from the speaker, clear, no static. "Don't lock the garden gate. Tomorrow, when the sun comes up, someone is coming to see you." I turned off the phone and looked toward the window. The garden gate was slightly open. I didn't remember leaving it like that. The next morning, the sun crept in shyly through the curtains. I got up, my body stiff and my head heavy. The first thing I did was look out at the garden. The gate was still open, and right in front of it, in the damp earth, something was shining. I went out slowly, afraid it was just an illusion. But it wasn't. It was a small, tarnished golden key, half buried in the dirt between the flowers. I picked it up carefully. It had the initials HG engraved on it. Helen Graham. My heart skipped a beat. That key belonged to her old wooden chest, the one she swore she had lost years ago. I went back inside. I put the key on the table and went straight to the bedroom closet. There, among blankets and boxes, was the chest. It was heavier than I remembered. I put the key in the lock, and though the wood groaned, it turned without resistance. Inside were letters, photos, and a small red-covered notebook. On the first page, in her handwriting, it read, "If you're reading this, David, it means I'm gone." But not completely. My breath caught. I turned the pages. Every page was a note for me. Advice, memories, phrases she used to say. But when I got to the last page, there was something different. A drawing. A rose surrounded by a spiral, and underneath, a date. Tomorrow. Just that. That word again. I closed the notebook, feeling the tremor in my hands. Everything in this house seemed to be speaking to me in a language that only she and I understood. And the most terrifying part wasn't thinking that Helen was sending me signs from the beyond, but that she knew I would receive them. That night, the radio in the bedroom turned on by itself. An old song, one we used to dance to in the kitchen, played with a distant echo. I walked over to turn it off, but before I did, I heard something in the music. A woman's voice whispering my name. David. I spun around, but there was no one. The air turned ice cold. Then, something fell behind me. A photograph. It was of the two of us on the beach, young, happy. But what froze my blood was what was written on the back, in the same handwriting as the notebook. "I told you you'd see me tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in front of the clock, watching the hands struggle to move, marking every second like a blow to the chest. I thought about calling my kids, but I couldn't explain any of this without sounding like a crazy person. How could I tell them their mother was talking to me from a numberless phone, from a buried seed, from a house that breathed her name. At dawn, a noise woke me up. It was the doorbell, the same sound I'd heard the night of the funeral. I stayed perfectly still, paralyzed. I waited. It rang a second time. My heart was pounding as I walked to the door. I opened it slowly, but there was no one there. Just the garden covered in dew and a white envelope on the doormat. It had my name written on it in Helen's unmistakable handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, a single sheet, one sentence. Let the voices speak. They are memories looking for a way out. I put the paper with the notebook. That phrase echoed in my head all day. Because deep down, I knew. It wasn't ghosts visiting me. It was the memories she had left scattered around the house, waiting to be heard. That night, I sat in the living room with a new notebook and started to write. I didn't know if they were memories or messages, but I needed to put them into words. And as I wrote, I heard her voice again, clear, warm, close to my ear. Don't be afraid, David. I'm right here. The garden was always her refuge. Helen could spend hours out there, her hands deep in the earth, talking to the flowers as if they were old friends. She used to say that plants listened, that they understood human pain better than most people. I thought it was charming, but now, watching her rose bushes bloom without anyone to care for them, I understood that maybe she wasn't so wrong. That piece of land, once so full of life, was now a silent altar where every leaf seemed to pronounce her name. Since Helen's death, I avoided that place. It hurt to look at it. Every empty pot, every rusted tool reminded me she was gone. But after that letter, let the voices speak, I felt an inexplicable need to go back, as if the garden was calling me. The morning was warm, and the ground still held the night's dew. I grabbed a shovel, not really knowing why, and started to turn the earth around the central rosebush, the one she always said held secrets. With every push of the shovel, the air filled with her scent, that mix of jasmine and rain that seemed to follow me even inside the house. I hadn't gotten far when something metal hit the shovel. I bent down, brushed the dirt away carefully, and saw a small wooden box wrapped in a damp cloth. I lifted it. It was sealed with a red ribbon, faded by time. I took it to the patio table and with trembling hands untied the knot. Inside, there was a yellowed envelope, a folded photograph, and a small white stone. On the envelope, in Helen's steady hand, it read, "For when you need to see me again." I opened the envelope carefully, afraid the paper would crumble. It was a letter dated 6 months before her death. It said, "David, if you're reading this, it means the time has come when the silence is starting to weigh on you. Don't cry. My love, I haven't disappeared. I just changed places. Love doesn't die. It transforms into small things, into a song, into the smell of the earth, into an unexpected call. If you hear my voice, don't be scared. It just means you're finally looking properly." I stared at that page for a long time, unable to breathe. Every word was like a sigh from her, crossing through time. I picked up the photograph that was with the letter. It was us, much younger, in that same garden. She was holding a white stone between her fingers, the same stone that was now resting on the table. On the back of the photo, a short message. "What we love will always bloom beneath your feet." I felt a chill. I looked back at the ground, at the dirt I had disturbed, the same spot where I had planted the seed I found days ago. The sun was shining right on it, and I would swear that the sprout, barely visible, moved slightly toward me. From that day on, I went out to the garden every morning to take care of that little plant. It was my new routine, my new purpose. And as the sprout grew, something in me began to heal. The pain was still there, but it was different, less sharp, more serene, as if Helen's presence was crossing the boundary between the impossible and the real. The nights were still long, but I wasn't afraid of them anymore. Sometimes, when the wind blew, I could swear I heard her voice mixed in with the rustling leaves. One night, as I was watering the garden under the moonlight, something made me stop. The shadow of a woman was projected on the wall, thin, calm. My heart stopped. I took a step back, but there was no one there, just the reflection of the lamp and the shape the wind drew in the air. And yet, I felt an invisible hand brush mine. A light, familiar caress. The same gesture Helen used to make when she wanted to tell me, "I'm here." The next morning, a sound woke me, a little tap on the window. When I looked, I saw a white petal stuck to the glass. I ran out to the garden. The flower had bloomed during the night. It was different from any other. Its petals were so pale they seemed to glow, and in the center, printed by nature or by something greater, was the faint outline of a heart. I fell to my knees. I didn't cry. I just smiled. Because I knew, without needing any proof, that it was her. That in this flower, in this garden, in this earth she had touched so many times with her hands, Helen had left me a way to keep seeing her. That night, before going to sleep, I went to the rose bush, cut one of the petals, and saved it inside the red notebook I found in her chest. And I wrote one sentence under her drawing of the spiral. Love doesn't disappear. It transforms into a root. I turned off the light, lay down, and just before closing my eyes, I heard her voice one last time that day, clear and soft, floating in from the garden. "Thank you, David." I slept like I hadn't since she left, with a full heart, with my soul at peace. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, and for the first time since she was gone, I didn't feel alone. I don't know why I went back to the cemetery. Maybe because ever since the white flower bloomed in the garden, I felt I had to close the circle where it all began. The day was gray, and the air smelled like dampness and melted wax. I brought a rose from Helen's garden, wrapped in paper. I wanted to leave it on her grave, not as a goodbye, but as an, "I'm still here." The path to her plot was long and quiet. The headstones seemed to watch me, lined up like witnesses to something I still didn't understand. When I got there, the earth over her grave was disturbed, as if someone had been there recently. I bent down to arrange the flowers, and just then, I heard a voice behind me. "Pretty flower, not from around here, is it?" I turned. An older man with a white beard and a long coat was watching me with a kind smile. His eyes were clear, and they held that strange mix of weariness and wisdom that only people who have seen more goodbyes than hellos have. "No," I answered. "It grew at my house." "Ah," he nodded slowly. "Then it was for her." I froze. "You knew her?" "Not personally," he said, "but I've seen her come by." His words made my skin crawl. "What did you say?" "Your wife," he replied, not hesitating. "She comes by some nights. Always brings white flowers and leaves them right where you're standing." "That's impossible." "Nothing's impossible when someone has unfinished promises," the man answered, lighting a cigarette with shaky hands. "Believe me, son, in this place, you learn that the dead have habits too." The old man introduced himself as Mr. Henderson, the cemetery caretaker. He said he knew every story behind the graves, as if they were chapters in a book only he could read. "Sometimes," he said in a low voice, "souls come back when the living haven't quite understood their message." "And you think my wife has something to tell me?" "I don't think it. I know it." His gaze locked on mine, firm, deep. "She was here last night, stayed for a good while, just looking at the moon." "And you saw her?" "Yep. A slender woman, graying hair. Her dress was blue, had a white flower in her hand." My heart jumped. Helen was buried in her blue dress. I couldn't answer. I just stared at him, trying to find a rational explanation. Mr. Henderson continued. "Don't be scared, son. Sometimes love just doesn't settle for one goodbye. After all, what is death but another way of waiting?" His words stuck with me. I didn't know if this man was crazy or if he had just told me the truest thing in the world. Before I left, he offered me a thermos of coffee. "Night falls early around here. Don't stay too long," he warned. "This is the hour the silence starts to talk." I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch with the white flower in my hands. The sky was overcast, but through the clouds, I could make out a faint glow, as if the moon was insisting on lighting up my garden. Suddenly, the air changed. The scent of flowers mixed with Helen's perfume, that subtle smell of jasmine that only she had. And then I heard it. A voice, soft, trembling, like a whisper in my ear. "Don't be afraid of him, David." I shot up, looking for the source of the sound. Nothing, just the wind moving the branches. But on the table, where I had left the flower, I found something that wasn't there before. a dried petal with one word written on it. Listen. I couldn't breathe. The handwriting was hers, identical to the letters. There was no doubt. I went back to the cemetery the next day. I brought another flower and waited for Mr. Henderson. When he showed up, I told him about the petal. He looked at me calmly, without surprise. When two people who love each other refuse to separate, the world starts to bend a little, he said. The living get signs, the dead look for peace, and you, David, you're right in the middle. What should I do? I asked. Listen. But how? He smiled and gave me a small, rusted cross. Sometimes the silence is the only voice we need. Put this under your pillow. If she has something to say, you'll know. I did it that night. I turned off the lights, placed the cross under my pillow, and closed my eyes. The sleep was deep but different. I dreamed of the cemetery, of Mr. Henderson standing by the grave, and Helen next to him looking at me. She held out her hand and said, "You still don't understand, David." "What do I need to understand?" I asked. That love that goes unspoken finds another way to speak. I woke up with tears in my eyes and my heart racing. The pillow was damp, but not with sweat. On it, the cross was glowing with a golden hue it didn't have before. And when I turned my head, in the window, a shadow was moving away slowly toward the garden. I ran out, barefoot. The grass was cold. No one was there, just the scent of jasmine and a soft breeze that caressed my face. Then I knew. Helen wasn't calling me to torment me. She was calling me to guide me. And I was finally starting to listen. The morning after the dream about Helen, the house felt different. I don't know how to explain it, but something in the air had changed. It was denser, more electric, as if every object was holding a secret about to be revealed. The hallway clock read 6 a.m., even though it hadn't worked in years. The seconds ticked by on their own, one after another, with a rhythm I recognized. That sound, that stubborn tick-tock, was the same one that accompanied Helen's last days in the hospital. I stood there listening, hypnotized until between each tick of the second hand, I thought I heard something else. A murmur, a word I could barely make out. "Look," the word repeated. Once, twice, 3 times, until I couldn't take it anymore. I turned on the light and searched the house as if I already knew something was waiting for me. Helen had left me clues before, always in places that meant something to both of us. So I started in the bedroom. I opened drawers, moved furniture, checked the closet. Nothing. But when I went to her vanity, where she kept her perfumes and her favorite brush, I noticed something strange. The mirror was loose in its frame. I gently pulled it away from the wall, and behind it, wrapped in an old handkerchief, I found a small box. I didn't recognize it. It was dark wood with a tiny lock, and there, tucked beside it, was the small golden key, the same one I'd used to open her chest. I turned it slowly. Inside, there was a phone. Her phone. The one I swore I had given back to the hospital to be stored with her belongings. I held it in my hands as if it were alive. It was cold. But when I pressed the power button, the screen glowed instantly. No charging needed. A single notification was on the screen. One new voicemail. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hold the phone steady. I pressed play. For a few seconds there was only static, like the sound of the ocean far away. Then her voice. Her voice, clear, firm, so real I had to lean against the wall. "David," she said, "if you're listening to this, it means you found it. I know you're struggling to understand what's happening, but I need you to listen to me calmly. There are things I didn't tell you, and places you still need to see." Her tone was different. She wasn't speaking with the fragility of her last days, but with the determination of someone who had planned every word. "Don't be afraid, my love," she continued. "What's happening isn't a punishment. It's an incomplete goodbye. Sometimes life leaves a loose thread that we have to tie up later. That's why I recorded this message. So you'd know that nothing that's happening is an accident." I swallowed, my throat dry. The sound of her breathing filled the silence before she spoke again. "I want you to go to the place where our story began," she said. "That little house by the sea where you told me you'd never leave me alone. There, you'll understand what I meant when I promised I'd see you tomorrow." The audio ended abruptly, with a small click. I looked at the screen. Exact duration, 1:11. a coincidence that didn't feel like one. I set the phone on the table and took a deep breath. The place by the sea. I knew which one. Our old beach house, abandoned for more than 20 years, a place we hadn't set foot in since our daughter was born, a place she loved and a place I avoided because it held more memories than I could bear. All day, I couldn't think about anything else. Every corner of the house seemed to be pushing me toward this decision. The clock kept ticking on its own, marking the hours with supernatural precision. Helen had always been a meticulous woman. She never left anything to chance. If she left me this message, it was because something was waiting for me there. Before I left, I went back to the garden. The white flower was still growing, but now it had a second, smaller stem emerging next to it. 2 stems, 2 lives, intertwined. I took it as a sign. I packed a small bag. I put in the phone, the red notebook, and the white stone. I started the car, and as the engine rumbled, I looked at the house one last time. I thought I saw her standing by the window, smiling. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and drove. The drive took 3 hours. The highway was empty, and a light rain tapped on the windshield like a constant whisper. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I had the feeling someone was sitting in the back seat. I didn't look. I was afraid to confirm what I already suspected, that I wasn't traveling alone. When I arrived, the sky had cleared. The ocean, immense, stretched out in front of me, calm, almost silent. The old house was still there, covered in salt and thyme, but still standing. I got out of the car, my hands shaking. The sound of the waves brought back the memory of her laugh, her blue dress spinning in the wind, the echo of her steps on the sand. And then I saw it. Hanging on the doorknob was a charm I recognized instantly. Hers, a small medallion with our initials swinging in the breeze. My heart hammered. I walked up the steps slowly. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. The inside smelled like damp wood, but also like her. And right on the dining room table, there was something that took my breath away. A photograph of us, freshly printed, still glossy. I was in it, standing in front of Helen's grave. And on the back, a handwritten sentence. "You're not alone. I'll see you tomorrow." The smell of salt was everywhere. The air inside the house was dense, almost solid, as if time hadn't circulated since Helen last walked through that door. Every corner seemed to hold a trace of her, the echo of her steps on the wood floor, the sound of the wind slipping through the cracks, the curtain moving with a rhythm that felt familiar. It was as if the house itself was breathing her name. I moved forward slowly. The floorboards groaned under my feet, and the walls, damp from the sea air, seemed to whisper. In the center of the room, the photograph I'd seen from the doorway was still on the table, me in front of her grave. I picked up the picture carefully. The ink was still fresh. It was impossible. No one else knew I was coming. And yet, there was my reflection, captured in a moment I didn't remember living. A cold draft ran down my spine. I looked around. On the sideboard, there was a dust-covered notebook. I opened it. On the first page, Helen's handwriting. "If you've made it this far, it's because you're still listening to me. Don't be afraid. The truth lives in the echo." The echo. The word repeated in my head like a bell. The house was the echo. The sea in front of it. The memories that bounce off the soul when it refuses to forget. I went into the hallway. The doors were all closed except for one, the bedroom where we used to sleep. I pushed it gently. The smell of damp wood mixed with something sweet. Jasmine. On the bed, folded neatly, was her favorite blanket, and on the pillow, an old cassette recorder. I pressed play. The tape turned for a few seconds before her voice filled the room. "David, if you're here, don't be scared. I know it's hard for you to believe in what you can't touch, but love doesn't need a body to keep speaking. I left this recorder so you could hear my truth, when your heart was ready." I swallowed, feeling the weight of every word. The voice continued. "I didn't die the way you think I did. The body left, yes. But before that, there was something you never knew. The doctor lied to you, David, and I found out too late." The silence that followed was unbearable. My mind was spinning. The doctor? Lied about what? She kept talking, the recording becoming more tense, more fragile. You made the decision to sign for my release. You thought it was the right thing to do. But it wasn't. I found out later that there was a treatment that could have saved me. I don't blame you. I know you did it out of love, so you wouldn't see me suffer. But by the time I understood what had happened, it was too late. And I wanted to forgive you before I left. That's why I left you this house, these signs. Not to punish you, but so you would understand. You didn't take my life. You took away my fear of dying. The tape ended with a click. The sound of the ocean filled the silence her voice left behind. I felt my legs tremble. I sat down on the bed. The weight of the guilt crashed down on me with a force I hadn't felt in years. Helen had known everything, and she had still chosen to love me until the very end. I stayed there for a long time, not moving. The breeze coming through the window moved the curtains like invisible hands. Suddenly, a sound interrupted my stupor, a sharp rap from the floor below. I went down the stairs slowly, each step creaking like a mournful sigh. The sound was coming from the living room. When I got there, I saw something impossible. Helen's phone, the one I had brought with me, was lit up on the table. The screen showed a new notification. Incoming message. My fingers shook as I opened it. It was a short audio clip, barely 10 seconds. Her voice again. You know the truth now, David. Now you have to come to the place where I said goodbye. You'll find what I left for you there. The audio cut off with a burst of static. Then, total silence. The wind stopped. The ocean went quiet. The air seemed to hang, suspended. And then I saw it. In the frame of the window, a figure, tall, thin, her loose hair moving in the breeze. Helen, or what was left of her. She wasn't there like a ghost, but like a reflection, a projection of what my mind and my heart refused to let go. I stared, not blinking. Her lips moved, and though I heard no sound, I understood what she was saying. Don't look for me with fear, David. Look for me with love. I blinked, and she was gone. Only the smell of jasmine remained. When I went out onto the porch, night had fallen completely. The moon lit up the sea with a pale glow. The sound of the waves hitting the shore sounded like a deep human breath. And then I understood. She wasn't asking me to find her body. She was asking me to find her story, her truth, and most of all, her forgiveness. I went back to the car, my heart still racing. The voicemail was still on the phone, repeating on a loop like an echo. You'll find what I left for you there. I looked at the horizon. I knew exactly what place she was talking about, the clinic, the hospital where she died, and right there, in that instant, I felt that the real journey was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. The sound of the ocean kept crashing in my head as if trying to wash away my thoughts. Helen's words on the recorder kept repeating. The doctor lied to you. I felt like a man walking on broken glass, knowing any step could shatter him. And yet, I had to do it. I needed to know. Because if what she said was true, then my love had also been my condemnation. I drove toward the hospital in the early dawn. The highway seemed endless, a gray line under a faded sky. The building appeared through the fog, just like in my memories. Tall, cold, its windows dark, as if it too were asleep. I parked in front of the emergency room entrance. The security guard recognized me. Mr. Graham, he asked, surprised. Haven't seen you here in years. I nodded with a tired smile. I'm here to close a loop. He didn't ask any more questions. I guess you can see it in an old man's eyes when he's made a decision you can't stop. I went inside. The smell of disinfectant threw me back into the past with cruel precision. Every step I took down the hall was an echo of that day I saw her for the last time. The nurse at the desk looked at me with curiosity when I asked to speak to Dr. Shaw, the cardiologist who had treated Helen. Dr. Shaw, she repeated. He retired a year ago, but she checked her computer. He lives nearby in the old part of town. She gave me the address, and I went. His house was a few blocks away, an old home with a small, neglected garden. I knocked on the door and waited. When he opened it, he looked at me with some surprise, but not fear. His hair was white, his eyes sunken, and his voice broken by the years. David Graham, he said, as if he'd been expecting me forever. I nodded. I'm here to talk about my wife, about Helen. His face changed instantly. A shadow crossed his eyes. He let me in without a word. The inside smelled like tobacco and old paper. On his desk were stacked medical files, one of them with my last name written on it. I sat down. He did too, across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke, until I said, "You lied to me." "No," he answered, his voice hoarse. "I hid the truth from you, which isn't the same thing." I stared at him, not blinking. "Why?" The doctor sighed, searching for words like someone digging through memories. "Your wife had a chance." "Yes?" "An experimental treatment, expensive, risky. The hospital wouldn't cover it, and she didn't want you to know." "What?" "Helen asked me to keep it a secret. She said she had seen enough pain in you, that she didn't want to prolong the hope just to watch you suffer more." The words hit me like a cold wave. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew everything." "She did. And she still let you decide for her." "No." The doctor shook his head. "She decided for both of you. The treatment might have given her a few more months, or it might have taken her life sooner. She preferred to leave with dignity. The only thing she asked me was that, when you were ready, you would understand." I couldn't respond. I just stared at the file on the table. The doctor pushed it toward me. "Her complete medical file," he said. "It's yours." Trembling, I opened it. On the last page, I recognized her handwriting, a brief note. "David, my love, if you ever read this, I want you to know that you didn't take my life. You gave me more life than you can imagine. You didn't save me from my body, but you saved me from my fear." Tears blurred my vision. The paper was soaked in seconds. Dr. Shaw looked at me with compassion. "You didn't lose her, Mr. Graham. You just let her go in peace." "Why would she leave me a message now?" I asked through my sobs. "Because there are things the soul doesn't forget, and because sometimes the dead wait for the living to forgive themselves so they can rest." I stumbled out of the house. The midday sun hit my eyes, and for a moment I thought I saw her silhouette in the heat rising from the asphalt. Helen, in her blue dress, watching me from a distance. She wasn't smiling. She was just observing me, with that calm expression she always had when she knew something I didn't. I felt the air become lighter. The weight I had carried for years began to dissolve, slowly, like a cloud. I walked to the car. Before getting in, I looked up at the sky and murmured, "I understand now, Helen. You didn't want me to save you. You wanted me to learn how to let you go." The wind blew from the direction of the ocean, even though we were miles from the coast. And in that whisper, I'd swear I heard her voice, clear, sweet, saying, "Thank you, David. I'll see you tomorrow." I stood still, my eyes closed, letting the air wash over me. For the first time since her death, I felt something like peace, and I understood that sometimes the truths that kill you can also be the ones that save you. 3 days passed after I spoke with Dr. Shaw. 3 days of a strange, almost sacred silence. I had read and reread Helen's note so many times I knew it by heart, but something was bothering me. That final phrase, "You saved me from my fear," felt more like a message for the future than a goodbye, as if there was still something left for me to understand. I slept little, ate less. The garden kept blooming, but the air in the house had a different weight. Not light, not heavy, expectant, as if something or someone was about to arrive. On the morning of the 3rd day, as I was drinking coffee on the porch, the doorbell rang. The sound shot through me. It was the same tone, identical to the one I'd heard the day after the funeral, before all of this began. My heart was in my throat. I walked to the door slowly, holding my breath. I opened it. A young woman stood in front of me. Dark hair, fair skin, a steady gaze. She wore a gray coat and held a folder under her arm. For an instant, the world stopped. It was like looking at Helen 30 years ago. My legs trembled. I couldn't speak. She was the one who broke the silence. "Are you David Graham?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes," I managed, barely audible. "Then this is for you." She held the folder out to me. "What is it?" "A letter," she said. "A woman named Helen gave it to me a little over a year ago. She asked me to deliver it to you personally, but she told me to wait, to come when I heard the sign." "The sign?" I repeated, not understanding. "Yes." The young woman gave a sad smile. "Yesterday I heard a woman's voice say my name in the middle of the night. I don't know how to explain it, but I knew I had to come." Silence fell between us. The wind blew hard, moving the curtains behind me. The scent of jasmine filled the air. I invited her in. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm Lucy," she said as she entered. "I didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't startle me, Lucy." I lied. My very soul was shaking. We sat at the dining room table. She placed the folder on the surface and pushed it gently toward me. "It's sealed with a red ribbon," she said. She asked me not to open it. The color of the ribbon was identical to the ones Helen used to tie her old letters. My fingers trembled as I untied it. Inside was a white envelope and a photograph. The envelope had my name on it, in her unmistakable handwriting. I opened it. The page inside was yellowed, with the faint scent of lavender she always wore. I started to read. "My dearest David, if this letter has reached your hands, it's because someone helped you find it. I don't know who this person is, but if I chose her, it's because I trust she carries a piece of me in her heart. If you are reading this, it's time for you to know the whole truth, not just the medical truth, the other one, the one I never dared to tell you when I was alive." I had to stop. The air had become thick. Lucy watched me in silence, not moving. I continued reading. "Many years ago, before I got sick, I made a decision that changed our lives. We had a daughter, a little girl who didn't get to grow up with us. The doctor said the pregnancy was risky and you were so overwhelmed with work, with the bills, with the house. I didn't want to worry you. But she was born, David." And she breathed. For a few minutes I held her in my arms. Then, silence. Or so I thought. But much later I found out the baby had survived, that she was given up for adoption without telling me. I couldn't find her. I looked for her my whole life, David, and before I died, I found her. I dropped the letter. My hands were covered in a cold sweat. The room was spinning. Lucy leaned forward, worried. "Are you okay, Mr. Graham?" I looked at her, my heart shrinking. Helen's voice continued from the paper. "Her name is Lucy. She has your eyes. I told her about you. I told her about the good man you were, the father she deserved to know. I asked her to find you when she heard my voice, because I knew that somehow my voice would still be there, waiting for you both." The letters blurred through my tears. The letter ended with one sentence. "Take care of her, David, the way you would have from the beginning. She is your tomorrow." I don't remember how I stood up. I just know I walked to the window and threw it open, gasping for air. The wind hit my face, and with it, a scent I recognized immediately. Jasmine and salt. I turned back to Lucy. She was holding the photograph that came in the folder. It was an old, faded picture. In it, Helen was holding a baby. And on the back, handwritten, "Lucy Graham, 1989. I felt the world collapse. I put my hands over my face. "It can't be." Lucy approached me slowly. "I didn't understand it either," she said. "But when my adoptive mother died, I found a box with this same photo. On the back, it said my biological parents loved me, but that life hadn't let them be with me. I never knew more. Until now." I looked into her eyes, and there, I saw Helen's eyes, the same sweet, deep gaze, full of tenderness and strength. I had no doubt. It was her, my daughter. We spent hours talking. I told her everything, the sickness, the call, the letters, the garden, the white flower. She listened in silence, her hands clasped on the table. Sometimes she smiled, sometimes she cried. She said she had also dreamed of a woman in a blue dress calling her name. "She said I had to find you," she whispered, "that you had something to tell me before she could rest." Hearing that, something inside me broke, because I understood that Helen wasn't asking me to find her. She was asking me to find our daughter. This was the tomorrow she was always talking about. This was the promise of the call. I took Lucy's hands. They were soft, warm. "Your mother always believed in miracles," I said, my voice breaking, "and you are hers." She smiled through her tears. "So, can I call you Dad?" I couldn't answer. I just nodded. And in that gesture, I felt that everything time had broken was beginning to come together again. That night, Lucy stayed at the house. I made up the guest room, though she said she was a little scared to sleep alone. We stayed up late talking, sharing laughs, silences, and memories that felt shared, even without having lived them together. At one point, she looked out the window and said, "Do you see that light?" I followed her gaze. In the garden, right above the white flower, there was a faint glow, a small light, like the reflection of a dancing flame. Lucy got up and smiled. "I think Mom is happy." I didn't say anything. I just watched her. And in her profile, lit by the garden light, I saw Helen again. Her same calm, her same way of looking at the world. I walked to the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that death wasn't a border. It was an open door. And on the other side, she was still watching over us. Before I went to sleep, I looked up at the sky. The moon was shining over the ocean, I whispered, my voice barely a thread. "Thank you, Helen, for the call, for the forgiveness, and for giving me back what I loved most. I'll see you tomorrow." And in that instant, the wind blew, carrying the unmistakable scent of jasmine. The entire house seemed to sigh. And I, with tears in my eyes, knew she had kept her promise. The next morning, the sun came through the dining room window with a different light. It wasn't the cold clarity of the previous days, but a soft, almost maternal warmth. Lucy was still asleep on the sofa. Her face, calm, reminded me of the sunrises I spent with Helen in this same house, back when she used to tell me that every day brings a message if you dare to listen. Maybe this day was bringing ours. While I was making coffee, I heard a sharp sound. Something had fallen from the shelf in the hallway. I went to look. It was an old book, one of Helen's favorites, Letters to a Young Poet. I picked it up to put it back, but as I opened it, I noticed it was hollow. Someone had cut out the middle pages and hidden something inside. There, wrapped in a linen cloth, was an envelope sealed with red wax, and on the front, Helen's unmistakable handwriting, for when you're no longer looking for answers. A chill ran through me. Lucy appeared behind me, her hair messy, her eyes still sleepy. "What's that?" she asked. "Another letter," I whispered. We sat at the table together. I opened it carefully. The scent of lavender filled the room again, as if her presence was materializing in the air. I began to read. "My loves, yes, this letter is for both of you. David, if you're reading this, it means you found her. And Lucy, I know you're there. I always knew you would be. I imagined you two together more than once at this very table, just like now. Maybe crying, maybe laughing, but reunited. That was my true wish. Not to be remembered, but to see you find each other. Because what time separates, love always brings back together." Lucy took my hand. Her pulse was trembling. We kept reading together. For years I kept silent, because pain weighs less when it's shared with God rather than with men. But silence has a limit, and mine broke when I learned my daughter was breathing in another part of the world. From that moment, I knew I couldn't die without you finding each other, so I turned my goodbye into a bridge. Every sign, every letter, every voice you heard was my way of guiding you here. I stopped. The ink looked smudged, as if a tear had fallen on the page as she wrote it. Lucy touched the paper. Her voice shook when she said, "She knew all of this was going to happen." I kept reading. "David, I forgive you for the decisions you made and for the ones you didn't. I know you did the best you could with the love you had. Never blame yourself for my leaving. Dying wasn't my punishment. It was my way of preparing for this meeting. And Lucy, you are the tomorrow I promised your father. You are the flower that bloomed after the storm. Don't live with resentment or questions. Live every day as a message of love. And when you look at the ocean, remember that I will always be there, where the waves blend with the sky." I couldn't go on. Tears blurred my vision. Lucy rested her head on my shoulder and cried quietly. We stayed like that for a long time. As the wind moved the curtains and the house seemed to breathe with us. Finally, I managed to continue. "Beneath the white flower in the garden, there is something else. A small box with 2 rings. They're the ones we bought when we found out we were going to be parents. We never used them, but I want you to have them, not as a symbol of marriage, but of a union, of blood, of what never dies. We looked at each other. Without a word, we went out to the garden. The sun was shining on the flowers, and the breeze brought the smell of damp earth. I knelt by the rose bush, in the same place I had found the first box. Lucy helped me dig with her hands. A few inches down, a small metal box appeared. We opened it together. Inside, 2 simple silver rings. On the inside of one, it read, "Always." On the other, "Tomorrow." Lucy gently placed them in my hands. I took the one that said "Always" and slipped it onto her finger. She did the same for me with "Tomorrow." For an instant, the world seemed to stop. The wind blew hard, and a cloud of white petals rose into the air, spinning above us like a blessing. "Do you feel that?" Lucy whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice choked. "It's her. She's watching us." We hugged, and in that embrace, I understood that Helen had achieved what death could never prevent. She had brought us together. That night we lit a candle on the garden table. Lucy read the last line of the letter aloud. "If you ever doubt, look at the flame. Fire is the echo of life, and as long as it burns, you will know I am not gone. Because love, when it is real, does not die. It changes shape." The candle flickered, and its light seemed to draw a female figure in the air, ethereal, serene. We sat in silence, watching the flame. Time ceased to exist. The sea, the sky, and the house felt like a single body, breathing with us. Lucy took my hand. "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" "You're seeing her right now," I answered, pointing to the white flower, open under the moon. "And you, Dad? What will you do now?" "Keep living," I said. "But this time, without being afraid of tomorrow." Before bed, we put the letter and the rings in the same box, now covered with a jasmine-scented handkerchief. We left it on the mantel, next to Helen's portrait. Lucy kissed the photo and whispered, "Thank you, Mom." I dreamed of her that night. She wasn't sick or sad. She was wearing her blue dress and walking barefoot at the ocean's edge. When she saw me, she smiled. She spoke, with the same voice I heard in that first call. "Stop searching, David. Everything we love, when it's real, always comes back." I woke up with a peace I had never known. The house was silent, but alive, and in the air, once again, floated the scent of lavender. I never thought I'd return to the cemetery with a calm heart. The last time I was there, anger was burning in my chest. Today, however, I felt something different, a new serenity, as if Helen's words had cleared the air around me. Lucy walked beside me in silence. She carried a bouquet of white flowers, freshly cut from the garden, the same ones Helen cultivated with so much love. The wind moved her hair, and for an instant, watching her walk among the graves, I had the feeling I was seeing the 2 women I loved most merge into one. The sky was overcast, but it wasn't threatening rain. It was that soft gray that seems to hold respect for those resting beneath the earth. We stopped in front of the grave. The marble had damp spots, and Helen's name was beginning to fade on some of the letters. I caressed the stone with my fingers. "Don't worry," I murmured. "I'm here to keep my promise." Lucy placed the flowers. Then she knelt, and in a trembling voice said, "Hi, Mom." I couldn't hold back the tears. It was the first time I had heard her say that word. Her voice broke as she said it, as if she had been holding it inside her entire life. She stayed like that for a few minutes, silent, hands clasped, eyes closed. The wind blew softly, moving the dry leaves that covered the ground. Then, something changed. A scent of jasmine, strong and clear, began to surround us. Lucy opened her eyes. "Do you smell that?" she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. The air grew warmer, lighter. Suddenly, a gust of wind lifted the petals from the bouquet and made them spin in the air, forming a white spiral above the grave. We stood motionless, watching as this silent dance seemed to be guided by an invisible hand. When the petals fell again, they formed a perfect shape in the center of the marble. "A heart," Lucy began to cry. So did I, not from sadness but from gratitude. I felt Helen was there, not as a ghost but as a living, loving presence, watching us and smiling from a place where time no longer hurts. "Thank you, Mom," Lucy said through her sobs, "for waiting for us, for bringing us together." I leaned down, kissed the cold stone, and murmured, "I understand everything now, Helen. You didn't want me to save you. You wanted me to save myself. And you did." We sat by the grave for a long time. Lucy asked me to tell her stories about her mother. I told her about her laugh, about her habit of humming old songs while she cooked, about how she always saved buttons she found, just in case they were needed one day. Lucy laughed through her tears, imagining it. I realized she wasn't just learning her mother's story, she was learning her own. Every word was a seed, bringing her closer to her roots. "Do you think she's listening to us?" she asked suddenly. "I'm sure of it," I replied. "And what do you think she'd say right now?" I smiled. Probably something like, "Stop crying and go get something to eat. It's cold out." Lucy laughed, that clear laugh that shot through my soul. It was the same one Helen had. The silence returned, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was a companionable silence, the kind you share with someone you love. And then, without warning, we heard a sound. A distant melody, like a music box playing on the wind. I recognized it instantly. It was the song that played at our wedding, the one Helen hummed in the kitchen, the one I played for her the night she fell asleep for the last time. Lucy put her hands to her mouth, surprised. "That song." "Yes," I whispered. "It's hers." We just listened. The music seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The wind carried it, bringing it closer and then letting it fade, like a sigh that refused to be extinguished. And in that moment, I knew this was her goodbye. Not with tears, but with a song. The melody faded slowly until only the sound of the ocean remained in the distance. As we walked back to the car, Lucy stopped and took my arm. "Dad," she said, "do you think we can let her rest now?" "No," I answered, looking at her tenderly. "I think she's finally letting us live." We got in. As I drove, I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw a figure by the gravesite, a woman with graying hair in a blue dress with her hand raised in goodbye. I blinked. She was gone. But the scent of lavender filled the car. Lucy smiled without looking at me. "You saw her too, didn't you?" "Yes," I replied, "but I wasn't scared this time." "Why?" "Because now I know she didn't come to get me. She came to say goodbye." We drove the rest of the way in silence. The landscape passed by like a river of light and shadow, and as the sun set behind the trees, I understood that pain, when shared, stops being a wound and becomes a memory. When we got home, Lucy lit a candle in front of her mother's portrait. The flame danced slowly, casting warm shadows on the walls. I sat next to her. "You know what I was thinking while we were there?" she said. "What?" "That Mom didn't leave when she died. She just changed places. She went from being in front of us to being inside of us." I stroked her hair. "You're right, and I wish everyone could understand that one day." The candle kept burning. The air smelled like jasmine, as it always did when Helen made herself known. Lucy rested her head on my shoulder. We watched the fire until the flame shrank to a tiny point. Then a breeze crossed the room and snuffed it out. But the smoke that remained formed a spiral that rose to the ceiling, leaving a trail of light behind. I didn't feel sad. I felt that, at last, Helen was resting, and with her, so were we. I slept deeply that night without dreams, and for the first time in years, the silence wasn't empty. It was home. It's been 2 weeks since we visited Helen's grave. The garden is still blooming, more alive than ever. The white flower she left me as a sign is no longer alone. 3 more have blow-omed around it, as if the earth decided to follow her example. Lucy says it's her way of reminding us that love, when planted in fertile ground, always multiplies. I believe her. Every time I see her walking among the flowers, smiling, I feel like life has given me back so much more than I ever lost. At night, I like to sit on the porch, with a blanket over my legs and an old notebook in my hands, the same notebook where Helen used to write her thoughts before bed. Between its pages I found poems, shopping lists, memories of trips and small phrases that now seem like prayers to me. One of them said, "Love is not a fire that goes out, but the light that teaches us to walk in the dark." That phrase stuck with me, and maybe that's why I decided to write her one last letter. Not to say goodbye, but to leave a record that everything we lived was worth it. My beloved Helen, I've taken a while to write to you because it was hard for me to understand that you no longer needed my words. But now I know this letter isn't for you. It's for us. To leave a mark on the world that time cannot erase. Since you left, I've learned that death doesn't cut the ties of love. It only changes their shape. I used to look for your voice in my dreams. Now I find it in our daughter's laugh, in the smell of the flowers, in the wind that comes through the window every morning. Lucy is just like you. She has your way of looking at the world, your patience, your courage. Sometimes I watch her, and I feel like I'm seeing you walk through the kitchen again, humming that old song you loved so much. I told her everything. I told her about you, about how I met you, about how your presence filled every room just by breathing. And she listens as if she already knows it all, as if those memories belong to her too. Thank you for bringing her back. Thank you for teaching me that faith isn't about believing everything will be okay, but about trusting even when nothing makes sense. Thank you for leaving me signs, for not giving in to the distance, for waiting for me until my heart was ready to understand. Today, finally, I can look back on us without pain, only with gratitude. I put the pen down on the table and took a deep breath. The air smelled like jasmine, damp earth, and the sea, as if all the stages of our story were gathered in this one moment. I kept writing. You asked me once what I was afraid of. I told you I was afraid of losing you. Now I know the real fear was not learning how to live after you, and yet here I am, alive. Not like before, but alive. With your memories guiding my steps and your voice whispering whenever the silence feels too big. Lucy and I are going to keep up the garden. We promise to take care of the flowers because I know you're there. Every petal, every scent, every new bud will be a conversation with you. And when my time comes, when the clock stops, I don't want them to mourn me. I want them to read this letter and understand that love was, is, and always will be my true inheritance. I closed the notebook carefully. I put it inside a wooden box along with the chest of rings, the photograph, and the first letter Helen wrote me from the hospital. On top, I placed a stone from the garden, smooth, polished by time. Lucy was watching me from the doorway. "What are you doing, Dad?" she asked. "Saving the things I don't want time to erase." "And who is that for?" "For you," I answered, "and for whoever comes after." She came over, sat next to me, and took my hand. "It's a legacy then," she said. "Exactly," I nodded. "A legacy of love." Lucy stared out at the ocean. The sunset was painting the sky orange and purple. After a while she whispered, "Do you think Mom is proud of us?" "I don't think it," I replied with a smile. "I know it." That night when Lucy had gone to sleep, I went out to the garden with a lit candle. I placed it next to the white flower, the first one, the one that had grown on the day of the funeral. The wind was blowing hard, but the flame held on. I spoke to her in a low voice, like someone talking to a person sitting right next to them. "We did it, Helen. The circle is closed. Your voice doesn't scare me anymore. It keeps me company. And every sunrise in this house will be a new beginning, not a memory of the end." The ocean roared in the distance, calm, constant. I looked up at the sky and murmured, "We'll see each other, but not tomorrow. I still have to live a little longer for the three of us." A shooting star crossed the sky right at that moment. I smiled, not because I believed in miracles, but because I had already lived one. I snuffed out the candle with my fingers, and as the smoke rose, I felt a warm breeze brush my face. It was the same air that blew the day Helen left. But now, it didn't bring sadness. It brought peace. Before I went to sleep, I wrote the last line in my journal. Sometimes love isn't measured in years, but in footprints. And yours, Helen, were left in every corner of this house, on our daughter's skin, and in the heart of this old man who finally learned that to die is not to disappear, but to be transformed into everything we love. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and for the first time, I fell asleep smiling. Sometimes love doesn't end with death. It just changes its voice. Now I understand that love isn't extinguished by death. It just changes form. Helen isn't gone. She's in every flower that blooms in my garden, in Lucy's laugh, in the silence of the nights that no longer scare me. Today, I know I didn't lose her. I just found her in a different way. Tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. And if you've ever felt that someone you loved never really left at all, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join me for the next story. Because at my age, I've learned that true love never really dies.